So we will now be joined by Drew Bent, who is the co-founder and COO of Schoolhouse.World, Julie Kofod, Senior Director of Sustainable Development Initiatives at the United Nations Foundation, and William Florence, Head of Strategic and Government Initiatives at Google for Education. So in the earlier education panel, we discussed some of the technology-enabled solutions that are being developed in education globally and how government and industry may better collaborate in the development of equitable edtech solutions. We're going to pick up on some of these topics, but first, we want to ask, from your vantage point, what are the most exciting opportunities and the biggest challenges that technology poses in education today? I wanted to have Julie, perhaps you can kick us off with an overarching status of education globally. How are we doing with regard to SDG 4 and other indicators of education globally? And thanks to you all.
Thank you so much, Elise. I hope you can see me. I'm here in a very large conference room, so a little zoomed out, but I hope that you can see me and hear me well. So I will try to zoom out for everyone a little bit, and there almost couldn't be a better time to have a global conversation about where we're headed and how to really tackle all of these challenges than right now, because we are right at the helm of the beginning of the so-called high-level week here in New York. This year in particular is especially important because we have reached the halfway point of our road towards 2030 and the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals that was agreed in 2015 by all UN member states. And if you are unfamiliar with the UN sort of debate and the conversations around sustainable development, I'll just let you know that it has been a lot of doom and gloom over the past several years. And some of these messages have, of course, come from the very highest place, with the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, saying that the Sustainable Development Goals are in desperate need of rescue. We've recently received a few important reports on this topic, including the Secretary General's Special Edition report on progress on the SDGs. And across all of the 17 goals, it is clear that we are only on track with about 12% of the 140 targets that we have data on. 12%, that's almost more of a happenstance than by design. For 50% of the targets under this global to-do list of goals, we are seeing a bit progress, but we are still vastly off track. And for 30% of the targets, we are regressing past 2015 baselines. So there's a foundation for this doom and gloom that we're hearing, but the coming week needs to be about opportunities and possibilities and all the innovation and the good things that can come from issues such as technology and access and AI and so on. So this is a great conversation to have. I wanted to highlight just a few specific data points around SDG 4 that deals with education, just to illustrate to you how far we really are falling behind. Between 2015 and 2021, the school completion rate increased from 85 to 87 in primary, so a little jump, from 74 to 77 in lower secondary, and from only 54 in 2015 to 58 in upper secondary education. So even before the onset of COVID-19, these rates had slowed down relative to progress from 2010 to 2015. And so looking closely at reading levels as well from the end of primary school, for which trend data cover 34% of the world's children, the analysis shows that global learning levels showed no progress between 2015 and 2019. Furthermore, learning losses due to COVID-related school closures have been documented in 4 out of 5 of the 104 countries that have carried out such studies. So this is really incredibly impactful for the young generation that is growing up in a world that is supposed to be about the future we want. I'll just highlight a few other data points for you, and then I promise I'll stop and I can get into more of the details if necessary. But just around school infrastructure specifically, and the electricity and accessibility and so on. In 2020, approximately a quarter of primary schools globally do not have access to basic service such as electricity, drinking water, and basic sanitation facilities, let alone access to the internet that can facilitate an acceleration of learning. For other facilities, like I just mentioned, such as computer facilities and the provision of disability adapted infrastructure, figures are even lower, with around 50% of primary schools with access. So half of primary schools have no access to computer facilities and so on. So this is really a massive impact this is having on a very large portion of the young students across the world. I'll stop for now, but happy to answer more questions on all of these details.
Thanks, Julie. That's fantastic. And before we turn it over to get industry perspective from William and zoom in a little bit with Drew, Andreas, is there anything you'd like to add to that global perspective that Julie just discussed?
Yeah, I think that global perspective is correct. What I would just bring in is a little bit more nuance. I mean, particularly in the education field, there has been so much variability. You've seen actually, with regard to the education target, some of the poorest countries making actually some of the most significant progress, some very wealthy countries falling behind. I do think the world is no longer divided between rich and badly educated nations and wealthy and well-educated ones, but we do actually see that we live in a time where education, innovation, entrepreneurship can really make a difference, sometimes on only local levels, but that makes me still quite optimistic in the face of these quite disturbing numbers now.
Thank you. William, from your perspective at Google, working with governments and school systems, what is your take on this?
Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me to participate with such distinguished presenters. And every time I hear Andreas speak, I just nod throughout the whole of his discourse, because I wish I could find something to disagree with Andreas on, but I cannot. So let me just build upon that. Maybe I think my perspective is that we are indeed living in exciting times. We for sure still have a lot of challenges, to Julie's points, in terms of achieving SDG 4. But we're pretty optimistic at Google. Of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about what we think is probably the most exciting thing happening in technology for education, which revolves around the use of artificial intelligence technologies. It's not a new thing, really. It kind of, came to the forefront last summer with